Hello everyone, welcome to Kishore Chess Mentor. In today's section, we shall see the king and pawn endings. This is part of the series Interesting Endgames in Chess, and the positions that which I am showing you are having, let's say, king and pawn both for white and black. So the moment we see in terms of material, both of them are quite equal, and we cannot assume it as a draw. We need to see the position of the king as well as the pawn from both the sides, and then we need to take the conclusion. The initial thought of seeing this position is that white king is quite near to the black pawn, so there is an opportunity for him to capture it, and black king is quite far away from black pawn, so there are more possibilities for him to lose the pawn. So the next question is it enough to just win the pawn in order to win the game? So we shall see whether it is enough or we need to do some tricks in order to get the pawn, and meanwhile we need to put the king in the right square, say the key squares, so the pawn can be promoted as a queen. So here in this position, king g1 is certainly not going to be a right move, because you know what? So when you see this position, let's say for example king g1, then king to h2, and then say king here, and then king here, and then finally king h5. So it will take 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 moves to take the pawn. Okay, so rather there is one more move, that is king f2. So here let's say for example you will have 1, 2, 3 and 4 moves to capture the pawn. So in terms of the distance, I think king f2 is the right move. Okay, and king g1 is having one extra move. Let us see like what happens if you play king g1, and if white plays king g1, then black plays say king d7, and now if king goes to say h2, and then king comes here, king goes here, king comes here, king goes here, and he defends the pawn on time. Okay, so if you try to play something else and he will just move the king, so he is not going to leave the pawn. Okay, so you won't take the pawn, so hence like it is going to be a draw. And okay, so let's try king f2. Can we say that it's so easy that the king f2 comes, and I mean like let's say if king goes, okay, so I mean probably like you can come here and king comes here, king goes here, king comes here, king takes pawn, and it looks like it is very easy to win this game, right? So it is so easy to play this kind of end games, it looks like, but it is not. So there are certain tricks that which black will try to apply, and I mean like white needs to be cautious in order to understand those tricks, and I mean like he need to defend it well. So king f2, the first thing is say h4. So what he is trying to do is that, I mean like he is trying to move his pawn. Okay, he knows that the king won't come there right on time, and he is trying his other options, and the pawn is going to advance. So what is the advantage of moving this pawn? Anyway the pawn, he is going to lose the pawn. And out of temptation, okay, so what we used to do is we tend to move king f3, because assuming that king f3 and say king f3 and say king g4, okay, so you are going to take the pawn for sure, and it looks so I mean it looks promising as well, and it is the shortest distance to take the pawn. So what happens here is that if you move the king to f3, that's a bad move, okay, because he can refute it with h3, good move. So why h3? Okay, anyway like he is going to lose the pawn. Okay, if you take it back to the pawn, and it's so easy for black to defend this position. The reason being, it is a rook pawn. Okay, and rook pawn, okay, it is high possibility if the king is able to come to say h8, and I think it's a draw. Okay, and see, let's see like whether it is able to come there right on time. So he reaches right there on time, and it's a draw. Okay, and you can pretty much ask me like whether, I mean like after pawn to pawn, let's say what if I bring my king. Okay, so you can try to bring your king, but that doesn't help either. Okay, you won't, until and unless you take control of this a8 square, you aren't going to win this game. Okay, so king here, and that's it. Okay, the king is not going to come out of this one. It is going to play between say h8 and g8, and I mean like it is not going to come out, so it's end up in a stalemate. So what we have to do is we need to understand that, okay, so there is a move like this here, so we need to see, okay, so he played h4, right? So if you go to king f3, he will play h3. Okay, you can pretty much ask me, okay, why should I take the pawn? Let me move g4. The problem here is that you can move g4 and let's say he can bring his king. Okay, sorry, yeah, he can bring his king and you can move the king here, king into king here, king here, king here. So in the basic, as a basic rule, the king has to be before the pawn, right, in order to win the game or let's say take opportunities. But here the king is not before the pawn. Okay, so what happens here is that it is I mean like this is a theoretical endgame and I mean like it goes on like this. Okay, so for people who don't know, king takes the opposition, pawn moves, king goes back, king comes here, king goes back, waiting for white to move. If white goes to say f6, he will go to f8, or let's say if he goes to h6, he will go to h8, and then if you move the pawn, he will go back and king has to support the pawn and it end up in a draw because it's a stalemate. Okay, so I mean like king has to be before the pawn. Okay, so having said that, and let's say h4 and say king g1, and instead of this one let's say king f3, pawn here. You can pretty much ask me, why should I move my pawn to g4? Better I can move it to say g3, right? You can certainly do that, but the problem here is that the king will never go and take this pawn, because in order to attack the pawn the king has to go to say what to say I mean g4. Let's say if the king comes here and if you say like you wanted to attack the pawn with say king g4, he will move his pawn and it's going to be a win for black. So otherwise you have to go the other way around. King comes here and it is going to be a longer route, and it is not, it doesn't help either because the black will bring his king and defend the pawn. So what happens is g4 is the right move, but even after g4 I may like it end up in a draw. So what we have to do, instead of king f3 we need to play king g1 excellent move. The reason being like now g3 doesn't work, now h3 doesn't work, because you know what, he can move g3 and then king h2 and then king into h3. So you move the pawn to g3. So the main thing is that let's say you can pretty much ask me like, what if I move my pawn to g4, because the pawn has to go forward, right? I mean like I need to promote it to queen. That's a valid question, but you know what, he can bring his king there, right there on time. Okay, king into king here, king here, king here, and it's again a theoretical draw. Okay, so you need to understand that. Okay, so how much you need to move your pawn. So say king g1, pawn here g3. Let's take it slow and steady. King here, king here, king into king here, king here. You know what, as I told you in the king and pawn ending, the king has to come before the pawn. The king came before the pawn and it also like he is taking some right squares. So king here, and if king goes, king comes here. Okay, and you know what, I think like you can pretty much move your pawn from here on. Okay, so you move the pawn and they say if he goes here, then come here and king moves, king comes here, pawn here, and you are promoting it as a queen. I hope you have liked this position. Okay, the most important thing is I hope you understand that I mean king and pawn versus king and pawn is certainly not a draw, and it all depends upon the position of the king as well as the pawn. You need to see like whether it is far away or whether it is so near, and even the shortest distance doesn't mean that that is the right thing to do. Okay, you need to see all these things. I hope you have liked this position. If you like this position, you can like, comment and share. If you wanted to see more videos like this, you can subscribe to my channel Kishore Chess Mentor. Thank you so much.